Gone a bit mad with reaction to this court decision. Let's take a look. Zwanele, thank you, ICASA. Now we can look forward to fair call rates. Don, thank you, ICASA, for slashing the call rates. 20 cents makes a huge difference. Yolanda, I for one am behind ICASA. MTN and Vodacom are way too expensive. Now we can make calls for less. We will test this theory in a few seconds. Langutani, MTN and Vodacom are crooks. I regret using their networks for more than 10 years, thanks to ICASA. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by telecoms analyst Dobek Pater. Thank you for joining us, Dobek. And let's just look at these tweets, because I think a lot of people think that from tomorrow, because interconnect fees fall, our fees in general are going to fall from tomorrow, but that's not the case, is it?
Not likely, no. Any discounts or reductions in retail tariffs for consumers are at the discretion of the operators. So just because the termination rates go, which is a wholesale rate between the operators, doesn't mean it automatically translates into retail tariff decreases. Now, SABC has in the past indicated they would pass that, effectively that entire reduction of 20 cents per minute onto the consumer, to the customers. However, because we only know what the rates are going to be for the next 6 months, there's no certainty what the rates will be 6 months from now. It probably would be difficult for SABC to introduce a reduction, especially to the full extent of 20 cents per minute, only to have to revert maybe to higher rates 6 months down the line as a possibility.
So do you think they may actually hold back and we won't see any difference at all for consumers?
Well, I think they will hold back. It's actually into the privilege. What I would do if I was SABC, I would keep the additional revenue that's coming their way and invest it in network upgrades and development. That's where they need to put the money in order to remain competitive. And the way the verdict has been passed down today effectively falls into SABC's lap, because now they have a valid excuse, so to speak, not to pass any savings onto the consumers, because no one's certain what will happen in 6 months' time. Rather keep the money and spend it wisely.
You're right. So they save, but they don't necessarily have to pass it on.
No.
Who do you think is the big victor here? Because MTN, Vodacom saying that they've been vindicated.
Yes.
We're seeing the interconnect fees drop tomorrow, so there's some regulation, but it has to change over the next 6 months.
Yes, it will, yeah. I think it's a bit of a compromise, and so saving of face on all sides. It would have been very awkward, perhaps, not to have regulations in place as of tomorrow. Effectively, that wholesale part of the market would have been unregulated, which means theoretically the operators could charge whatever they wanted each other without that framework in place, or trying to enter into bilateral agreements. It probably wouldn't have happened. We probably would have carried on as before, but it's good to have that structure in place. On the other hand, it provides ICASA with some time to go and rethink what they actually suggested earlier this year. They already indicated about 4 days ago, when they scrapped the 2015-2016 decreases in mobile termination rates. I think there was a strong indication that they came to the realization perhaps they were a bit too aggressive in how they wanted to see the so-called glide path termination rates decrease over the next 3 to 4 years. And now it gives them an opportunity to go and go and rethink it and reanalyze it and reintroduce the suggestions to the market.
Do you think that that's what will change maybe the pace of the cuts? Because I do believe we have very high interconnect fees if you compare us to global operators. Will that change, or maybe this asymmetrical thing that they were trying to do, which was punishing MTN and Vodacom more than SABC?
I think probably both will change to an extent, so that the steepness of the glide path will change. Maybe we'll see it spread out over more years, or 2016 it will terminate at maybe 15 cents as opposed to 10 cents. And then certainly the asymmetry, I think, will need to be addressed. Currently, as of tomorrow, as of midnight, we'll see a 2-to-1 ratio, or more than 2-to-1. So MTN and Vodacom will be paying SABC and Telkom Mobile twice as much as the other way around. But by 2016, you would have seen a 4-to-1 ratio. So MTN and Vodacom would have been paying 4 times as much per minute before going back in 2017 to a 2-to-1 ratio. So the asymmetry is very steep, and the question is it justifiable in the market? We already had one glide path for 3 years, ending in 2013. The question whether it actually benefited SABC and to what extent still remains, and would this glide path benefit SABC any more than the previous one did.
The idea around asymmetry is that MTN and Vodacom have benefited in the past. I want to talk to you about how they look now, just PR-wise, because they've gone to court. It looks like they're battling this cut. You can see what consumers are saying. That it looks perhaps like they want to continue to rip people off.
And so they're obviously justifying that in the sense that they're the big networks in the country. They generate that additional revenue to reinvest in the network. People want new communications products, mobile broadband, for instance, accessing content over the internet, over the mobile devices, and they need to use that money to keep reinvesting in the network. Now, yes, they may be viewed in some quarters as the big bad bullies on the block, but I think they still have the majority of the subscribers, although MTN has been losing some, Vodacom as well at the expense of Cell C. But I think today's judgment in court has vindicated them to an extent that perhaps the introduction of the new glide path reduction was unfair. Well, it wasn't thought out properly and wasn't maybe done in full consultation with all the operators in the market. Very
quickly, my final question: if Cell C does decide to reduce its rates, even though it's temporary, will people actually move because of the spotlight on this issue? Because also, a lot of people are still locked into contracts. Yes, Could it actually cause a shift in the market?
Well, there are people locked into contracts, but roughly we've got about 20% of our subscriber base in South Africa on contract, 80% on prepaid. They can move tomorrow. The prepaid is not bound. They have done that before with previous so-called price war, when Cell C began to reduce rates. So the price-sensitive consumers have been moving to Cell C at the expense of the larger operators on a net basis. But the question remains about the quality of the subscribers as far as Cell C is concerned. Are they bringing enough revenue with them for Cell C to actually sustain the operation long term and keep reducing the tariffs the way they have been?
All right, thank you so much for your analysis. That was Dobek Pater. And it will be very interesting to see what Cell C does over the coming weeks, but no rate cuts expected from MTN or Vodacom.